not only our Muslim communities, but African communities, Asian communities, Hispanic communities, and the wave still continues.
He looks totally
different. It's not going to stop, nor should we want it to stop. An unrelenting stream of immigration, non-stop. Folks like me who are Caucasian of European descent, for the first time in 2017, will be in an absolute minority in the United States of America. Absolute minority. Fewer than 50% of the people in America,
is that what
from
minority
then
means?
and on, will be white European stock. That's not a bad thing.
Wow. Let's get to this, the great replacement theory. This is the talk everywhere, and everyone is afraid. The left has been very effective in making people afraid to even address it. Now, let me be really clear here. I am not saying that the great replacement theory is a theory that needs to be espoused. What I am saying is that there has been a misrepresentation, of course, of shooters, how they've been influenced, and who is out there, right, preaching this idea of the great replacement theory. What they want to do now, people at CNN, MSNBC, ABC, NBC, CBS, all of media, YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, they want you to believe that it is mainstream republicanism to tout a neo-Nazi slogan of great replacement theory in order to silence you from discussing a very real issue of, I wouldn't even necessarily say race, I wouldn't even necessarily do the cop-out and just say culture, but voting demographics and the purchasing therein. So in case you haven't heard, let's just go here so you see what I'm talking about. Everyone from the left has been, we have a montage, right? Them blaming Buffalo on the great replacement theory and racist conservatives. You.
Officials believe the gunman accused of the mass shooting in Buffalo was inspired by the white replacement conspiracy theory. Now, this is a baseless belief that white people are being slowly but intentionally replaced by minorities and immigrants.
The concept was once a fringe theory, but now it's embraced by many Republican lawmakers and Fox hosts.
For example,
so
Fox News host Tucker Carlson. People count up this kind of stuff. So whether you watch him or not, the fact is that the people who do and who track this note that he has made a reference or variation to this type of hateful conspiracy theory, this replacement thing, over 400 times since 2016.
We also have, prominent talking heads, Tucker Carlson, Fox News, making hundreds of references, a study has shown, hundreds of references to this kind of great replacement theory.
Did you peer review that paper?
Of white genocide.
So when people like Tucker Carlson present a ready for cable version of the theory, it makes more extreme versions of it more accessible to audiences who would have never encountered it or would have never really thought about it.
The hate that through the media and politics, the internet, has radicalized, angry, alienated, lost, and isolated individuals into falsely believing that they will be replaced. That's the word, replaced.
Okay, so let me be clear about something. They're trying to use the term the great replacement theory. And the reason for that is that's basically an anti-Semitic sort of fringe theory that comes from people who believe that there's this cabal of Jews who are trying to replace white people. Okay. Of course, I don't believe that. And this is very important for me. I would like to see a comment below because I would like people to see the biggest, right-leaning YouTube channel that's ever existed. If you agree with the sentiment I'm about to express, I don't think that George Soros is sitting there, killing white babies. Okay. But what is happening is demographic changes due to large amounts of illegal immigration occurring unchecked and being made the beneficiaries of the social safety net, a current welfare system in this country, in order to ensure their votes. I'm not saying there's a planned orchestration of genocide against white people, but there absolutely is a plan in place that is taking place right now before your very eyes in allowing mass illegal immigration into this country in order to try and change voting demographics. Now, I know you're going to say, hold on, and I want you to comment if you agree that that's what's happening. And I didn't have to mention race once, by the way. Let's be really clear. However, that exact sentiment has been expressed for years by the left, and they do make it a race thing. They call it the browning of America, and they brag about it.
In a few years, we're going to be a majority brown country. White people will not be the majority in the country anymore.
This will be the first generation ever in American history in which whites will be a minority of the generation at some point.
As of 2007, every year, babies being born in this country, whites now are the minority.
In 2044, everyone is going to be a minority.
As the demographics change, as white people become the minority in the country, which is coming.
Demographics is destiny. Demographics is destiny.
Demographics is destiny, right? The country is changing.
I've been saying it here. Other people have been saying it here for years now, even before Donald Trump. The demographics is destiny.
The white population is declining for the first time in history in America, while the number of multiracial Americans have more than doubled.
So we live in a country where the demographics are changing. It's becoming less white.
Correct.
Okay.
You'll be announcing that we're calling the 38 electoral votes of Texas for the Democratic nominee for president. It's changing. It's going to become a purple state and then a blue state.
A vampire?
Because of the demographics, because of the population growth.
The growth in Texas has been almost entirely driven by non-white population growth, mostly by Hispanic and Latino population growth.
Demographics are destiny. So look, I think now it's fair. Hey, there's a huge difference between believing in the superiority of one's race versus acknowledging the changing of demographics. We have an overlay here. We have a reference. Let's go to overlay J. Really quickly. There you go. Those are the numbers. Those are the projections. Okay. And the left is bragging about it. Now, I'm going to get to the history a little bit of immigration, how this changed dramatically, and why there's a difference when people say, well, we're a country of immigrants. Well, that's true. Immigration up through the 1960s, certainly the 30s, 40s, not at all the same as today. Here's the primary difference. You cannot have open borders and you cannot have mass immigration when you have a social safety net and a welfare culture. It's very, very different.
Yeah.
And that's where we are right now. When that happens, you've got to close the books or at least have a guest book. There's a huge difference between legal and illegal immigration. The left tries to act as though we throw it all together. Look, if you look at the Irish, the Italians, the Jews, these people in Europe who are fleeing wars, people will now say, oh, what happened to Statue of Liberty? Give us you're tired, you're hungry, you're poor. Yeah, at that point in time, there was no promise to feed the hungry, no promise to pay the poor from the taxpayer. That's a very different time. It was a very different reason for people migrating to this country, and it is not a scenario today that is tenable when you have people coming in and suckling at the public teat.
Well, yeah, and they looked at it as the land of opportunity.
Yes.
The way that they could go and work hard and make something for themselves, not a place to come and just get taken care of.
Yes.
That was the thing. It's a little bit different mentality.
Well, what happened is they were fleeing impending war, right? Throughout, obviously, I don't know if you're a history buff, but
yeah. Do you know
the
there was
early 20th century? No, there were two.
Several.
Yeah. Yeah, unfortunately, they blew their wad when they called the first one like the Great War. They had no idea what was coming.
Oh no,
the Greater.
Like war. This is the best war. Oh, that doesn't ring right.
Wait till you see 3. That's coming any minute.
So a lot of people were fleeing Europe, right? Because of these impending wars. They were constantly under the threat of tyranny. They wanted to be a part of America. They weren't coming here to get handouts. They were not coming here to this country to break the law. Not saying that everyone right now who's coming to this country is breaking the law, but a disproportionate amount of crime certainly committed on the southern border is by people who are here illegally. So they came here with no promises on boats. Few bucks in their pocket. Today, half of all immigrant households receive at least one major welfare program.
Wow.
And the left wants mass illegal immigration. Why? So they can guarantee a path to citizenship and they can get votes. Race has nothing to do with it. But here's the thing. At one point, race did have something to do with immigration policy. And I was going by rote this morning or last night when I was talking about this. I think a lot of you don't know that there was a proactive shift in immigration policy. You can thank Ted Kennedy here in this country because they wanted to favor big corporations and keep a permanent working class. Okay, so let me kind of give you a little bit of a briefer. So after World War II, there are a lot of immigrants, right, that were coming from Europe, and they were skilled. They were looking for good jobs. In other words, they weren't coming from countries that had not developed places. What do you mean? Honduras, El Salvador, Mexico, places that have not given anything else, and I mean this, anything else to the modern industrialized world. They were coming from places like Germany, like Poland, like parts of the UK.
Well, and very relatively similar cultures too.
Right. Relatively
Obviously
similar cultures.
but relatively similar.
And they were looking for good jobs. Now, here's the thing. A lot of CEOs didn't like that because you're talking about immigrants coming in who are skilled.
Yeah.
And so they'll want to be
paid more. Yeah.
Right? So there was a bill, Ted Kennedy supported this bill that cut off immigration from what we now know as the EU, opened it up wide to the Pacific Rim countries. Okay? It's called the Hart-Celler Immigration Act of 1965. And they claim to expand civil rights, as far as the movement to immigration and abolishing this national origins quota system. Really what it did is it actually made it nearly impossible for European immigrants to come here with more skills, with more education, because they believed, and you go, why favor people from the Pacific Rim? Because you're talking about people who would come from manufacturing jobs where they were making pennies, go to the United States, and guess what? They were less likely to ask for more. And so this was the government saying, hey, CEOs, they want cheap labor. And right now, that's not necessarily. The Irish are coming in and opening up pubs. The Italians are coming in and, they're opening up restaurants and also organized crime. But I digress. They said, hey, the Germans are coming in and they're becoming engineers. These CEOs don't want that. So let's change our immigration policy to make sure that we bring in as unskilled, dependent, and therefore grateful to the government immigrants that we can. That was a decision that was made. You need to understand when you go, yeah, hold on. A lot of you inherently think there's a difference. You go, well, if I look at the Irish and the Italians, sure, we were a country of immigrants, but it feels like there was something different. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. This is basically like us today saying, hey, China doesn't pay those kids that work in those factories very much. Can we get in on that action? Can we make it easier for them to come over here and just do that here?
Yeah. So what you're saying is like, okay, let's say America is a Buick.
Yes.
And Ted Kennedy, for example, would be a CEO.
Yes.
Okay, let's say it's driven into the water.
Yes.
Now the water is immigration, and it's filling the car.
And
now Americans are Mary Jo.
That's exactly.
Okay, so now Mary Jo is just getting surrounded.
Yes.
But
and the Democratic Party waits a day and a half to alert the authorities.
Correct.
Well, but here's what the Democratic
Which really isn't
Party
even allegorical. That's actually what happened.
That's what happened. Yeah.
Don't worry. I'm going for help.
So the CEOs are just showing up all wet to a party and going, "I was here the whole time."
Yeah. Oh, hey, you're all wet behind the ear.
Good one. Good one. Where's Mary?
Yeah, killed the bitch. By the way, that's pretty good. By the way,
oh, that old chatterbox.
Yeah. Just so you know, because I know you watching right now, you may be 20 years old, 18 years old. We have more people in that demographic than any other. You may not know. Ted Kennedy killed abroad.
Yes.
Jeez.
It's on record
that he killed somebody.
It actually happened.
He drove her drunk into the Chappaquiddick River.
Yes, and then left her and lied about it and didn't even call for help, and she could have been saved. So just in case you're wondering what's this reference, it's not like some esoteric Dennis Miller. Yeah. It's something that everybody knows.
With no consequences. Sorry, the last thing there. The guy that punched the guy got more consequences for that than Ted Kennedy got for killing somebody.
Well, it's why the brothers got assassinated, and they looked at Ted and were like, all right, I think he'll be taken out fine.
Yeah.
And it's like, you're not doing anything?
Right. Yeah. Like, well, we're only killing all the Kennedys who did sleep with Marilyn Monroe.
Yeah.
So
that was the list.
There's nothing I can do.
No.
It's terrible.
So, Jill, but you were going to talk. This is also now this comes to today. And all the references are available at loudwithcrowder.com.
Right.
There was a proactive approach in America's legislative policy to basically say we don't want to bring in people who are coming from universities, coming from skills. We want to bring in people from sweatshops because that's what's best for the CEOs.
Yeah, and so this bolsters their voting base. Like that's what Tucker Carlson was talking about when CNN ran hit pieces on Tucker Carlson right after this shooting. They ran him talking about illegal immigration, people coming in from the southern border, and so they're like, okay, well, how many? Nearly 1.5 million encounters thus far in fiscal 2022. I think it starts in October, so it's about halfway through the year, just a little bit over.
Yep.
And compare that to 646,000 encounters for all of fiscal 2020. An
Make
entire
sure I
year.
confirm
that
this.
was
1.5.
Yeah, and that's
to 800.
No, just it's six.
To 646.
646,000. That's encounters.
That's like almost. It's like almost 3 times.
Well, but
not exactly.
In 2020, Donald Trump's last year, that was the number, right? And they're not even done yet. The 1.5 million will likely be 2.5 to 3 million, somewhere in that neighborhood by the time that fiscal year ends. So the next thing is, the Biden administration so far in this fiscal year, which is about 6 months old at the time that they gave the stat, has released over 836,000 illegal immigrants into the United States. The catch and release. That is more than the Trump administration encountered at the border.
And by the way, how many of them are getting formula? We don't have those numbers, but a lot.
Yeah, quite a bit.
That's part of it. But
shut your mouth. You think this is your country? What are you, a racist? But wait a second. I just want to buy formula. You're giving it to people who aren't even citizens. Shut your racist mouth.
Yeah. Well, the Supreme Court actually just heard a case where they basically wanted to get rid of the stay in Mexico policy, where Donald Trump said, look, if you're coming to this country illegally, the door is revolving. It goes right back into Mexico, and you can stay there. You can make your asylum claim there. You can get everything sorted out there. This administration changed that. They tried to change it by executive order, and it got challenged. Right. So that case has been heard. Hopefully we'll get a ruling on that this summer. But they are absolutely for, oh, you're here in the United States illegally? Okay, we'll set a court date for you. Go have fun.
Right.
And that's why Greg Abbott sent busloads up to Washington, D.C. and said, look, you're releasing them at our border. How about I bring them to your doorstep?
Right.
I'm not saying these are bad people. I'm just saying they're not doing it the right way.
Yeah.
Right? So that was the point they had. And they don't want a wall. They wanted to end Title 42, which basically was the COVID restriction.
No voter ID.
Send them back.
Because that's racist, even though 87% of black Americans want some kind of ID. But at that point, black Americans are inconvenient. Yes. So shut your racist mouth. Hey, black Americans, you think you should have voter ID? What are you, racist? Well, I need ID.
Yeah, but guess what? They're actually hedging their bets because they think voter ID is racist and they say you shouldn't have to have it to vote in this country, but they're also saying that everyone should get an ID just in case. I wonder why they're saying
because certain states are having ID laws. That's why.
Interesting.
And so they need to ensure that they can get votes. Again,
are these blue states?
Yeah, who knows?
Weird. Mostly Arizona, Nevada, Georgia, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin. I can't think. Michigan, maybe something like that.
I don't know.
And let me end this. Look, it's about voting demographics. Just to be clear, I don't believe that people use it interchangeably that race is destiny. Now, I also, by the way, this is something people won't like to hear. I also don't think there's anything wrong with white Americans wanting their neighborhood to look similar to how it looked with their dad and their grandparents. And, people tend to be comfortable around people they were raised with. Have you been to Mexican neighborhoods? Been to largely black neighborhoods? This is a natural process that takes place. Doesn't mean that you should seclude yourself, but I don't blame black people for watching black entertainment television. I don't blame Latino people for watching Telemundo. I understand that we have different tastes because we have different cultures. Melanin doesn't determine how you vote. Unfortunately, it's about buying votes from the Democratic Party. Like you said, they realized they weren't going to be able to buy the votes of, for example, Italian Americans who came here and started businesses and were paying taxes. They realized this back then, so they said, let's bring in a bunch of people who are basically indentured servants from these countries so that they'll be grateful to us and they'll vote for us. Well, now you see that changing a little bit, right, with those same Asian Americans back then. You're no longer convenient for them. You're starting to lean a little more right. So let's now bring in more people from Mexico. Let's make sure that our policy favors people coming from these countries that hey, look, you remember who helped you, right? You remember who brought you in? You remember who, even during a pandemic, we paused is it Title 42? We paused Title 40, right? Remember we gave you formula? Remember how to vote? Because on the issues, they can't. When you look at the issues of abortion, you look at the issues of even taxes, you look at the issues of what's taking place in schools, brown Americans, meaning all Latino Americans, and even Muslim Americans, I'm including them among brown Americans and black Americans, overwhelmingly would align with a center-right point of view. So they try to make it about things that they give you so they can purchase your vote. And then as we see today, they only use you when it's convenient. So look, I want to be really clear about this. It's not about race, but it's not just about culture, because people say it's not just race, it's culture. There's a part of that for sure. We all have different cultures. But let me present something to you, okay? This is something with white supremacists that really bothers me. To the actual white supremacists, and there are very few, like to the four of you. Look,
the boots.
Yeah, there are 50% of white people, actually probably more, in our country, who share your same culture, and they vote Democrat. And by the way, right now, think about it, and I understand demographics will change, and so you're concerned about that. However, let's assume those demographics change. The demographics are already bad enough when you take people from your own race and from your own culture. You can't say that it was black people. You can't say that it was brown people who screwed you with Barack Obama. It was white people with Bill Clinton, with Jimmy Carter. So I just want to make sure people are going to come and say, oh, it's a cop-out. I'm not saying that there aren't differences inherently between races. I'm not saying that there aren't differences culturally that often have to do with how people are that are racially based. I'm not saying any of that, but what I am saying is the primary issue is not that, and that's not how the Democrats are thinking of it. They're thinking of whose votes can we buy. And why don't you talk about half of this country whose votes have been bought? I would take 10 brown people who look and act differently from me for every white person who shares my race and culture and is voting to take my rights away. I'd rather have 10 Latino American, assuming, by the way, let's be clear, all legal immigrants, versus one Swedish immigrant who comes in and wants a social safety net system and, by the way, now has lost his bragging rights of being neutral as his shitty country tries to join NATO. How about this? Once you pay up the back bill, pay your tab and you can get in. The problem is that we have right now a system of immigration laws and it starts these people. And by these people, right now, I mean, primarily brown people. I mean, primarily people coming from South America by design, just because geographically it's easiest for them to come in illegally. And it's in the Democratic Party's best interest for the immigrants to be illegal. Think about that for a second. That by itself, it's in the best interest of the Republican Party and of the American people for immigrants to be coming here legally. It is absolutely, unequivocally, in the best interest of the Democratic Party for them to enter illegally. That's why their policy reflects it.
Watch Louder with Crowder live, Monday through Thursday, 10 a.m. Eastern.